Coming up, we are going to talk about the best changes made to attractions at Universal Studios Florida throughout the years. From our houses in Central Florida, this is the Universal edition of the Diz Unplugged. This is episode 255 of the Diz Unplugged Universal Edition. The Diz Unplugged Universal Edition is brought to you by Dreams Unlimited Travel, experts at helping you plan the perfect Universal vacation. Visit them on the web at www.dreamsunlimitedtravel.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Diz Unplugged Universal Edition. I'm your host, Craig Williams. Today, I'm joined alongside by my co-host, Ryno.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. That's my best Tim Curry and Rocky Horror Picture Show. The best Frankenfurter I can do where he goes, hello.
I like it. I'm digging it. So keep doing it. Or don't. Okay. But hey, everyone, we have a really great episode for you. It's going to be a fun one. Like I mentioned in that cold open there, we're going to talk about the best changes to attractions at Universal Studios Florida throughout the years. So obviously, with that, we're going to talk about attractions that buildings that have stayed essentially the same, but the attractions in the buildings have changed throughout the years. Like, for example, or just areas, I should say in general, because sometimes things were completely removed and rebuilt from the ground up. So, but it's a fun episode. We'll have that coming up for you in just a little bit. You might also notice in that episode that we are wearing different clothes. If you're watching it, that we're wearing different clothes from what we are doing right now. And that's because we already had this episode recorded for you. And then, with the intro part of the episode, some things changed in between the time that we recorded it and we're actually releasing it. So for that reason, we felt like we need to re-record this part, but then keep the rest of the episode. So you'll notice that switch. But for everyone listening, you won't. So I just wasted your time talking about this. But what was the news that I said changed in between now and then? Well, it is an update on the closure. So this happened already a while ago. So almost about a little over week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks, on April 9th to be exact, Tom Williams put out a message. If you don't know who he is the chairman and CEO of Universal Parks and Resorts. He put out a memo updating team members on what was happening with Universal Orlando in the future. And that is that they are extending their closure through at least May 31st. So he said that it's the right thing to do. And as they listen to government officials and health experts and think about you, that's the decision that they had to make, because they're safest at home and Universal wants their team members to stay healthy. So they will monitor the situation and adjust accordingly. But yes, Universal will remain closed through at least May 31st, if not longer, probably longer. So because he went on to say right afterwards that second, we are facing months of closure with no way to accurately predict when we will reopen. No business, even one as strong as ours, can sustain without having to make difficult choices. So it is bizarre that it would say we're going to close through at least May 31st and then basically say like, yeah, it's probably going to be even longer than that right away. But the news that comes with that is more based for team members, but a good idea too for the public to know what is happening with them. And that's in terms of how they're handling their team members. So their team members got paid through April 19th, which this show is already that is the day that this show releases. So the day this released, all team members got paid 100% through that point in time. And then effective on April 20th, nearly all of the employees for Universal will actually be paid at 80% rate, unless they are working at 100% rate. And then they will continue to be paid at that level too. So if they still have to work a full-time job, they'll be paid full-time. But if they're one of the people who are just, still at home right now and not really working as much, then they're only going to make 80%. And that is what it's going to be. And then on May 3rd, part-time hourly team members will be furloughed. So just like Disney, they will still have their benefits paid by their employer. So Universal will make sure that they still have their health insurance and paying their contribution on their behalf. But yeah, those part-time hourly team members will be furloughed beginning May 3rd. And then beyond that, who knows what's actually going to happen with Universal. But
so is that's different than Disney, right? Because Disney furloughed everyone.
Yeah, well, I mean, Disney didn't furlough everyone. They did keep essential employees around. Yeah. So it's not like everyone just left. But yes, the bulk of what workers at Walt Disney World, pretty much most of them were furloughed. And, they were given basically 2 weeks notice on that. But Universal was able to hold out a little bit longer in that regards. They were able to keep their employees paid at a bit of a more competitive rate for longer. But eventually,
I think that's awesome.
Yeah, no, that I think definitely has to do with the fact that, with Universal, even though the parks are shut down right now and movies aren't happening, the fact that they have Comcast shouldering some of the pay there is what allowed them to stay in flux a little bit longer. Granted, Comcast can't eat all of the costs eventually, because then it becomes really, really bad for them as a whole. But for a while, they're able to help out when possible. I mean, like the fact that construction is chugging along at Universal. I mean, that's them saying, listen, when this all turns around, we need to have some of these projects opened up and ready to go. So that way we can get people back in these parks and have them entertained. So I think it's sad news to know that Universal is going to be closed at least through May 31st, but it's nice to know too that they're trying to take care of their team members as much as possible. So it's still a bad situation, but hopefully good news is on the horizon.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a song to sing, but I didn't have one. The sun will come out tomorrow. Oh, there you go.
Things are gonna get easier.
Ooh, child, things are gonna get brighter.
Yeah. Okay, so that is that news. And with that, we are going to go ahead and get into our topic discussion. The first attraction that we think was a positive change overall, this one could have been kind of went either way for me on it, but I think overall I would consider it one of the best changes Universal has made in the long run of their history, and that is the fantastic world of Hanna-Barbera, eventually changed into Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast, but then finally changed into Despicable Me Minion Mayhem. I would consider that one of the best changes that they ever made, specifically the change from Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast into Despicable Me Minion Mayhem. I know there's a bunch of Jimmy Neutron fans out there somewhere. Odds are they have to be, statistically speaking, but I think it would be a lot easier to believe that there's more people out there in the world that love Despicable Me as well as the Minions versus Jimmy Neutron. So I think that's an easy change right there to make, especially as more and more Nickelodeon has disappeared from the Universal parks. It only makes sense to bring in something that they own. And Despicable Me Minion Mayhem, actually, I feel like it does do justice of the characters from the Despicable Me films. They all have their time to shine. Gru, the girls, the Minions. So I think overall for me, I would consider that one of the better changes. I've watched videos of the fantastic world of Hanna-Barbera way back in the day, and I've seen what that attraction was like. So if it went, I grew up on Hanna-Barbera cartoons, so for me, I would probably say that's a little bit more of a stretch between being a best change going from Hanna-Barbera to Despicable Me, but overall, in the grand scheme of things, I would consider it a best change. What you too, Ryno? You're in on this?
Oh yeah, I definitely think it's a good change. I didn't really, I can't remember experiencing the Hanna-Barbera stuff. I'm not 100% sure that was there on my last trip before I had gone again. Before I know Minion Mayhem. I don't know if you said at what year that opened.
That was 2012,
Yeah,
13, 2012 or 2013, right in that area. I want to say 12.
It was just something I kind of didn't really ever like even think about when I went in there, I guess, you know, like, cause it was just like, it was from that sort of, and I mean, especially like Jimmy Neutron was in that building, right? That's what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jimmy,
yeah. Just making sure I'm not getting it mixed up with the Shrek building, but,
no.
No, I remember thinking, well, Jimmy Neutron was like right after my time with Nickelodeon. So I didn't really associate. I have no connection with him. And like you said, Minions, I feel like it's a wider berth of people that connect to it because it's a movie theater movie. It's like, you know, it's more parents take their kids, but then I also, you know, enjoy it. And so it has a wider reach. And I just think, I like the house too, as the exterior of the building offers a lot more than when it was just kind of a soundstage too. So I feel like it's an improvement.
Yeah. And as they keep making movies in this world, I mean, it keeps the attraction actually relevant. So you can't argue with that. You know, it's the ride system itself. I wish they would have been able to upgrade in between attractions, because this literally is using the Hanna-Barbera ride system. Still, they just keep layering paint on top of it, but it works. It works. It's just not. It's not as clean. Something, you know, I wish I would have done it out in Hollywood. One of the times that we were out there to see, like, if, okay, well, you're taking this attraction and building it from scratch out there, is it a better experience in that regards? But none of that matters. I think
next time.
Yeah, next time for sure. So, but overall, definitely a positive change. The next one that I think we can absolutely hands down say would be one of the best changes, despite a few weeks ago when we gave our love letter to Murder, She Wrote Mystery Theater, despite how amazing that looked, the fact is that Murder, She Wrote Mystery Theater and then followed by Hercules and Xena, Wizards of the Screen, I think that definitely was a positive change going into Transformers the Ride 3D. So even though like the show building, that those previous shows were completely demolished in order for Transformers the Ride 3D to happen, it's all right there in that same space. And you know, Transformers the Ride 3D, while those types of simulator rides might not be for everyone because of motion sickness and such, it's still a solid attraction. And you don't have to like Transformers, I think, to really appreciate the attraction. It's got enough cool moments in it.
Yeah, it's also one of those types of things that I remember this attraction just popped up out of nowhere, I feel like. I don't know if it was just because, you know, back in the day I was just a casual park goer, but it was just like, it's one of those types of attractions where you're like, I can't remember what was even here before. Like, what did this space even look like physically? Not in like, oh, I don't remember what attraction it was, but the physicality of everything is completely different where it feels like they somehow built this kind of cool looking thing just right in the center of the park. And for me, from my perspective, it kind of popped up overnight. And like I said, it's kind of like, I've never once been like, oh yeah, this other thing was here this one time, you know? And you're right. Like, it turned it from something that was just kind of like, vaguely interesting, maybe to somebody, to a small few, into this like kind of experience for all.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's again going with the idea of let's make it more relevant. Of course, Transformers, very relevant still to this day, and I think will be for a long, long time in the future, as long as those movies keep making more than what their budget are. Even though the last Bumblebee struggled a little bit, and the last night struggled a little bit, but
I think Bumblebee was like much better received critically, so I think that'll have hopefully an uptick for the rest of it. You know,
I liked Bumblebee. I thought it was a fun movie. So it wasn't an epic movie by any means, but it was fun.
No, but it was way better than the last night or whatever that was. I thought the one before that was the worst one. It was so bad.
Yeah, I don't care for any of the Marky Mark ones. They're not for me. I'm a Shia LaBeouf purist for the most part. And
Eagle Eye all the way.
Yeah, and I like Bumblebee. I thought like I'm good enough with just those ones. That checks off all the books in my Transformers. Checks off all the marks in my books about Transformers. But yeah, and like when I started going to Universal, when I got hired there, like, they weren't even using the space. Like Hercules and Xena was long done, so it really was just like, oh, it really. You could have chalked this up to, would you rather have nothing or would you rather have Transformers?
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty easy get on there. And it's fun. I regret that I don't do it as much because I kind of look at it, since it is the same mechanism as Spider-Man, I kind of look at it, if I'm going to do one of those two rides, which one am I more likely to do more often? Spider-Man. So
Spider-Man,
I find myself... Yeah, but I like Transformers too. Like I still love the fact that you literally get in an elevator and move up in order to actually go into most of the ride, just because of the small space it was designed. So, and yeah, when Optimus Prime is talking to y'all, it's one of those good ride moments.
I like the slow motion part. I mean, I know that there's something similar in Spider-Man too, but it's one of those where you're like, this is a live action movie, and this in real life, I'm moving in slow motion. This is crazy.
Yeah. Yes, I would agree with that. So moving on to our next best change at Universal Studios Florida. This one might be a little bit controversial. I'm going to save our most controversial one for last, but this one might be a little bit controversial, and that is taking Jaws and Amity Island and bulldozing it all over to make the Wizarding World of Harry Potter.
Did you watch the video that Mike Aiello put out on Twitter where he did the narration for Jaws? It was like him in his office and on him, and then he did the spiel as the ride through was going. It was really good. But it was one of those things where like Mike Aiello is fantastic at it and clearly has this really passionate and love for it, but like Mike Aiello is not all of the skippers that you would have gotten. And when I watch that video, I think, wow, this is really heavily relying on the skipper. But then on top of that, this is not fun. Like, it's not, I'm sorry. Like, you could love Jaws as much as you want. Like, I think Jaws is a phenomenal movie, great movie, but that retraction, you know, as fun as it was, it was dated and done.
Yeah. I love Jaws, but the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, Diagon Alley, it's the most immersive part of Universal Studios Florida. It is so well designed. You are stepping into that movie. You have a marquee attraction inside that area. You have the Hogwarts Express connected right alongside with it. You have great dining. The two best shows you can find in the entire park are also in there, plus all the shopping, Ollivanders, everything that comes with it. I mean, there's no comparison when you really break it down. You get so much more bang for your buck. Yes, the memories are gone, and it's sad that we lost them, but there's only like a handful of people that I can think of who would probably end up saying that Jaws was better in the long run and that should have stayed. And that's those people who are like, no, I want the gentle boat ride, not an exciting attraction through an immersive land of Gringotts and an immersive land. But yeah, so I'm glad we both passionately agree with that one so much. I think we also will definitely agree with the next one. And that is the fact that they took the Swamp Thing set and turned it into Men in Black Alien Attack.
It's so funny. I don't even remember the Swamp Thing set there. I was Swamp Thing for Halloween when I was a kid too, which is crazy. But I like, again, like I enjoy Men in Black quite a bit. I think it's one of the more fun, interactive, I don't even know what type of attraction you would call that. Like, video game-esque or...
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
Essentially, so it's a... Yeah,
but it's like the aim, the shoot and get the points, and I always enjoy it because I love that it feels like I appreciate the little bit that like that first entry into Men in Black is exactly like in the movie. Like when you go through and you see all them hanging there, like that's what Will Smith was shooting at, and I always think that's really cool. And I love that experience. And plus it's rewritability too. I would go on Men in Black over and over again if it didn't make me, the spinning part, I wasn't concerned about that, but I think it's a fun thing where you can keep going and learning the secrets and do and rewrite. And I don't know.
Yeah, for me, it really just comes down to another case of relevance, and nothing against the Swamp Thing set experience that was there, but I don't know how you compare that to an actual attraction that is still ridiculously popular, even though the franchise it's based on doesn't match up to the same level, but the attraction's still popular. The attraction still functions relatively well for the most part, and just I don't know. It feels it's like we discussed on our Men in Black episode before the end of the year. It's like it really borders on that. This could be considered a classic Universal attraction in the long run, even though there's other stuff that could easily come along and replace it. And be a better use of the space for what it is still right now. It's got a classic sense to it. So I don't know if I'm even upset that I never saw the Swamp Thing set. So that's another question that I asked as I was going through this list before I actually write it down that this was a best change made. Would I have been upset if I didn't get to see the predecessor based on what I have there now? And this is definitely one where, I don't need to see the Swamp Thing set to know that Men in Black Alien Attack was a much better improvement in use of that space.
Yeah.
So, but our next best change at Universal Studio Florida, this isn't an attraction necessarily in itself, but actually the show and on the lagoon. And so started way back in the day with Dynamite Nights, a stunt show on the water. And then this moved into the Universal 360 Cinesphere show, where it was like the big giant globes were on the water and were projections onto it. And then that moved into the Cinematic Spectacular nighttime show, which was for the 100 years of movies at Universal Studios Florida. And this used mist water screens to project onto. And then wrapping up now where we are at the Universal Studios Cinematic Celebration. And there's no comparison to any of these shows. Cinematic Celebration is... while I know it will need to be updated throughout the years, it truly is the best show that Universal has created. We already saw what happens when they take that technology and blend it with an event like Halloween Horror Nights, how much capability it is. So just even looking at it from that, it's a show that not only it pays tribute to some really fun Universal movies, classic and new, but then also can be literally updated seasonally. Like, just come on.
I honestly think that the longer away from it I've been, the more I've thought about how incredible the Halloween Horror Nights version of that show actually was. Because my mother has her like work has been doing these like trivia things, and today it was what movies are misquoted, and it was true or false, is this the correct quote? And one of them was Frankenstein from It's Alive, and she was like, no, that's wrong. And I'm like, no. I was like, Mom, they like, trust me, they repeated that blaring over and over again right before the dance breakdown in this show I kept watching. And and I just was thinking it's interesting how, just talking about the regular Cinematic Spectacular, like they've really learned to lean into the properties that are represented in the park, but now also how those are associated hand in hand with Universal. And I don't know that they had those in the other versions of the show quite as well, minus like Jurassic Park, and showing their movies is great. And like, it's, I'd love for it to be like some sort of celebration of Back to the Future, but the show is a celebration of what you've experienced throughout the day kind of at the parks. So it's kind of a nice, like send off, like, cherry on the end of the sundae sort of a thing. And I think it does a really good job. And like I said, I love the way it ends right now with the Trolls, the song and the Justin Timberlake song. And then it puts you in the right mood. And, anything that can like shift your mood, I think is a real testament to storytelling. So
I agree. And honestly, I was watching my video of it just recently, and I really, the only part of it that I think goes on too long is actually the beginning with the Jurassic World stuff. Like, I feel like that just, it's long. It's way too much of that. I would rather see that shortened down, add in maybe something like Back to the Future, because even though the attraction's not there anymore, I mean, we still have Doc Brown walking around all the time, and we still have the DeLorean and
the DeLorean and the train. Yeah.
So maybe just give a little tiny bit of love to something like Back to the Future in there. The Cinematic Spectacular, the show that came right before this, it wasn't a bad show in essence. It's just something. Since they were tackling 100 years of Universal movies, it just like it all felt rushed, and then some sections, like their Classic Monster section, felt really on the nose with it. Like they hit it right. But then like when you go through the comedies, like it's always great seeing the Blues Brothers, but then when they're cutting to a clip from American Pie, it just is like, that's it kind of feels weird that even though American Pie was something revered when it came out, in terms of people are like, oh, this is a new type of comedy that we haven't seen before, even though constantly go through streams of dirty coming of age comedies all the time. But it's like, it just, something about that show felt disjointed, where this one, even though it does bounce around from E.T. to Harry Potter, Jurassic World, Fast and Furious, Trolls, it's all over the place, but something still. But
this one, you know what it is, I think, is that they've really acknowledged and embraced that culture of people having a loyalty to parks, sort of a thing, or like that being a big part of your life, where it's being like, okay, well, it's like what you said, not that the Cinematic Spectacular or the show before wasn't good. It's just, it was a celebration of movies. So it made it like its own other attraction. Whereas people who come to the theme parks, maybe they're just there to be at the theme park and they don't know all the Universal movies. So they're watching stuff that's popping in and out, and they're like, I have no idea what this is. But if you're showing stuff that you kind of really just experience in the parks, you're like, I know exactly what this is. And it's kind of the, like, we got you. We know why you love this park. This is why you love this park.
Very well spoken. And so definitely, I think it is one of the best changes made at Universal Studios Florida. And the last one, the most controversial one, that I think it honestly comes down to who is answering the question. This could have been on this list. It could have been on the worst. It could have been on the rest. We ended up putting it on the best changes. And that's Kongfrontation turning into Revenge of the Mummy. So I have spoken at length before. Ryno, I know Ryno was a scaredy cat back in the day, but I never had the opportunity to experience Kongfrontation. That being said, I am a massive King Kong fan of, like, the original, of course, not so much the 70s one. I like it, but I don't watch it very often. I truly do love the Peter Jackson one. I know that it is really bad at points, and it's especially the CGI. It's very long. In the extended version is even longer. It's
like 4 hours almost. It's like, good Lord.
It's a lot, but and I loved Skull Island, Reign of Kong, the attraction. I do love the attraction. I love the Skull Island movie. So it's like, I like every iteration of King Kong. So it might seem weird that I would choose Revenge of the Mummy over Kongfrontation, but I just had to base that on what I know about it in this case. And I've watched the video of Kongfrontation. So one of my good friends, Jeff, I'll see if I can find the link to it on his YouTube channel, because he posted video of it way back when I watched it. A really good video shot of it, and I got the entire experience from it. But then the more I read about Kongfrontation was that it was super unreliable towards the end of its run. Similar enough,
I think it caught on
Jaws.
Fire, didn't it?
You're talking in Hollywood.
Was that California?
All part of,
okay.
That's what spurred the change in Hollywood to the new one too, is because Kong was part of the fire, one of the backlot fires when it happened. They they needed to replace it. So then with Kongfrontation out here, from what I read, no one still knows why it really went away. The only kind of guesses to it is that it was way too expensive to maintain and it wasn't reliable enough anymore. But it was still popular. It just when it's not working, it's not working. So what they got out of it was a really, really fun roller coaster that I forget what episode we were just praising Revenge of the Mummy on a little bit back, but I mean, it's solid. And while in that episode I said, oh, I could see one day getting rid of it and adding something with Secret Life of Pets, like the new attraction coming to California, Revenge of the Mummy is a great roller coaster, and I'd argue that it's top 3 attractions in Universal Studios Florida.
Well, you see, the thing is too is that Universal really, really aggressively for the last 10 years or so trying to reignite their monsters, their classic monsters, and now finally starting to get some sort of tread with that. It's like I can see maybe even if they remove the theming of this from being like the Brendan Fraser mummy and just being a story of the mummy, you know what I mean? Like it would take a lighter overhaul, and just keep it kind of the same, but remove that filmmaking aspect of it that feels a little out of date. Especially since they're making a 3rd movie and there have since now been 2 more mummy movies, at least 1 more Brendan Fraser. But, and it's like, it's one of those things now where I feel like it'll eventually be like they can turn it into that celebration of Universal history, but like keep the attraction the way it is, I guess. Like it's the same ride. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's a hard one, I guess, because I didn't experience the other one. But the thing I love about the Mummy is it's just this different type of a coaster where I always say, well, if you're afraid of heights, you could do this one because there's not too many of that height related challenges in this, maybe like 1 part, and the rest of it's really based on it going fast, more or less, and it's cool in that aspect. And I love the cool physical effects that are involved in it. And I do, yes, Kong does have this history where I feel like he is instantly recognizable, but I feel like the Mummy in general, everybody knows the Mummy, like not the Brendan Fraser one, maybe, but the Mummy. I mean, I don't know. We're moving into a new generation where that could be a classic for a lot of people, to be honest with you.
It absolutely could. And I mean, not that Kong isn't a classic for many people out there. It truly is. But I just think about, I'm trying to picture this from the aspect of, with Universal, one thing that would definitely be in Kongfrontation's favor is the fact that it was more accessible to people than, if you didn't like roller coasters, chances are you'd still be able to do Kongfrontation and you'd be okay with that because it's not a roller coaster. But at the same time, too, it's like you just mentioned, Revenge of the Mummy is, I mean, it's not on the basic level of Woody Woodpecker's Nuthouse coaster as a beginner's roller coaster, but I would say it is still a beginner coaster.
Yeah.
If you're only,
you could even say intermediate if you wanted to, maybe.
Yeah, it's like if you're on the level where you're like, oh, okay, well, I know I can do like Slinky Dog Dash and Big Thunder Mountain Railroad at Walt Disney World, then you can handle Revenge of the Mummy. And I think it's really that next stepstone. Like if you're looking out at Hollywood Rip Ride Rock and you're like, nope, that's not for me. Yeah. I wish there was something else for me. That is the perfect example. And it's like, well, there's Revenge of the Mummy. And, I feel like with Kongfrontation, if that was the first of the classics to go, of like I would say, in a way, the 4 foundations of Universal being Kongfrontation, Back to the Future, just barking. They're losing their mind. The 4 foundations being, in a way, Kongfrontation, Back to the Future, Jaws, and E.T. Like, first to go, and then Back to the Future, and then Jaws. We still have E.T., so I know it's a cheap way around all of this, but I feel like, too, if we still didn't have something to hold on to classic Universal, then maybe I would probably say, nope, Kong changing into Mummy that ruined us from having a classic remain in the park forever. But as long as ET's there, I think we're fine on that level. So
I think about it too. Am I sad that I don't think that it's necessarily a sore spot for me that I missed out on Kongfrontation. Like, I think, man, I could have done it that one time, but I don't look at it as being like, wow, I really wish I could have done this thing, so I think that that's a testament. Like, if I had to give up what we have in order to try it, I don't think it would be worth it for me. I'd rather keep what we have.
That's where I ultimately landed at it too. Going back to what I said during the swamp thing in Men in Black, it's, if you look at it from that perspective, I would not give up having Revenge of the Mummy still to this day just to be able to go on Kongfrontation once. The same way now over at Walt Disney World, I would not give up Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway to have the great movie ride back. It's just sometimes it's hard when a beloved attraction's being replaced by something that actually is really, really impressive too, just doesn't have that same nostalgia factor. But I think overall it's a best change. On a different day, I might have put it on the rest category, but the rest, I feel like it would have been an insult because those ones are the ones where you just kind of like shrug your shoulders, like, I don't know.
Was that a Jim from The Office? That's what I thought.
It was if Jim Halpert was fat and had a double chin, then it was Jim. I also do I look at it as like a Rick Moranis, like, huh.
I can't do a Rick Moranis. I was trying to think if I should even try, and I was like, nah.
No. Yeah, well, you have to have the glasses first off. So that's where you lose. But
I will start the next episode with glasses and a spaghetti strainer in my head, and we'll see what happens.
Very good. I look forward to it. But I think that's it for our best changes to attractions throughout the years at Universal Studios Florida. Of course, we want to know what you think about this. I know a lot of you out there are going to disagree with stuff we have said in this. You're going to say, how could you not have mentioned anything about Race Through New York starring Jimmy Fallon? Remember, there's more episodes coming out, so feel
the
free.
Worst on its way.
Yeah, when we get to those ones, then feel free to rip us apart for not including those on the opposite list. But let's keep the discussion to the ones we talked about in this one, whether or not you think those were also best changes. I have a feeling a lot of people are going to disagree with us on Jaws and Kongfrontation, but I look forward to reading all of those comments. So definitely leave all your feedback in the comments below and hit that thumbs up button like we do, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit that bell button. And if you're listening to this and you're not watching it, well, you can always go over to the YouTube channel and find this video and leave us your thoughts on there. Or I also would recommend following along with Ryno and I on Twitter and letting us know there too. So you can find me, of course, at Teleclaster, and Ryno is RYNO1185.
I like talking about Universal. Ask me more Universal questions. People are just up our business with Disney, and I'm tired of it, to be honest. I'm getting tired. Let's switch it up.
We know lots of stuff. We're people. We're well-rounded individuals. Lots.
We have many leather-bound books.
I actually only have one, but that's...
I'm not sure I have any, to be 100% honest.
It's not a reflection on me. It's a reflection on my taste in books, I would say, if I had to make a well-rounded guess on it. But yeah, so that's it for this show. Leave us all those comments on what you think about what we said, and that's it. And if you need any other information, of course, you can head over to disunplug.com, home of our show notes page for this show and all the others on the Dis Unplugged podcast network. You can get your links to social media channels on there and so much more. Well, and I already gave you all the other information about YouTube and listening to this and that, so I'm going to skip it this time and just go ahead and say that's it for this week's episode of the Dis Unplugged Universal Edition. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week with another episode. But until then, remember, we still haven't changed the name.